Hi, Karen. Welcome to our second session. I have your new patient nutrition assessment form from last week, so I will be referring to that as the session goes.
Did it give you what you needed? I mean, did I fill it out right?
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah, I have no
Okay.
questions. But in case I get anything wrong or I just need some further clarification, I do have this as uh, a basic sheet.
Okay.
So from what we talked about last week, today we're going to touch on your high blood pressure,
Mm,
some ways to manage it so I can help you further along and change your lifestyle habits.
okay.
Um, if at any point it gets to be confusing or you need to take a break, you just let me know.
Sure. I have a cold, so I have water. So.
Okay, great. If you need anything, let me know. So I was going through this again last night before this session, and like I said from last week, everything is great. And I think we should begin by talking about what your food and nutrition related goals are, as well as lowering your blood pressure. I see you also want to lose weight. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Um, would it be all right if we also touched on that today?
Yes, please. That would be helpful.
All right, so we can begin by talking about exercising regularly to regulate your blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be anything strenuous like weightlifting and sprinting and stuff like that you see fitness gurus doing all the time. You could just be sitting watching the TV and doing some leg raises while you're sitting on the floor with the two dogs you said you had. You could also make it a nightly routine to walk after dinner when your son comes home from college and you guys can go have a nice little chat.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice and light outside. You could go take a walk. Just you could track it on your phone for either how long or how far. Or you could take the dogs with you, or you could go with your husband when you guys are home. You could even, I heard that you take care of your parents.
I do.
Um, if they ever wanted to go for a walk, you could always do that with them, and I heard they live in a very safe area.
I do.
Other than that, the exercising, you just need to get your blood pressure up, which does sound a little bit like something you wouldn't want to do, but you want to get your blood pressure to the active numbers, which are just higher because your
So
blood,
that's your heart rate, right? You
yeah,
just
you
want
want to
your
get
heart
your
rate.
heart rate up and your blood pressure up, as in that means you're exercising because that will help your body because you're losing weight, you're getting those good endorphins up to your brain, and you're just going to feel really good overall. And it can also help you sleep better, which we'll go over later too. Do you have any questions about exercising?
No, not really. I just because I have an erratic work schedule, and then I never know when I can't schedule it because
Mhm.
things are kind of all over. So that's my biggest challenge.
Right. If you ever wanted a referral to someone who could help you make an exercise plan, I cannot do that, but I would love to go over the professionals in the area. We could also branch out then when you're ready.
All right. Well, when I leave, then you can just give me the handout. Do you have some like a
Sure,
list
yeah.
or something like
All the
that?
locals. Yep.
Do you have somebody you could recommend?
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah, we
Okay,
can talk about that later.
great.
Perfect. Before we talk about diet, I do want to touch on sleep that I just mentioned. Another way to help maintain or lower your blood pressure is getting a healthy sleep schedule, whether that's waking up or going to bed at the same time or doing both. Do you do that now?
What, go to bed at the same time?
Or wake up at the same time? Yep.
Um, yes and no. I mean, I try to, um, but sometimes I get up early and
With
can't
your
go
work
back to sleep.
schedule.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so if you wanted to try going to bed at least at the same time,
I do.
that would be really good.
Well, I go within a 30-minute.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah,
That'll just help your body stay in a little routine. Having routines is good, even though that's a small one, that's a perfect way to start.
yeah. I did talk about that at my last doctor's appointment, and
Great.
we agreed on melatonin,
Okay.
which I do take 5 milligrams every night before I go to bed.
I did see that on your sheet. Um, with that being said, on your sheet, I saw you also take a blood pressure medication for your blood pressure.
Losartan.
Um, do you take that at the same time every day?
I do.
Okay. Do you take it with an 8 ounce glass of water?
Mm, I can't say that I do. No, I
Okay.
mean I drink water, but I don't. And I take my thyroid medicine in the morning, and that requires a big glass of water too. So
Okay.
I try to, but I can't really.
Well, that's okay. It's great that you take it the same time every day because I was going to talk about medication
Hmm.
compliance with you, but it looks like we don't need to touch on that. Keep doing what you're doing. And next, you touched on hydration, which is also something I wanted to
I'm
talk
getting
about.
better at that.
Staying hydrated all during the day, even just keeping a glass next to your bed at night, saying, I want to finish this when I wake up, I'll finish it before I go to bed. is really good because the water can lubricate the organs in your body and everything, and even help your bowel system get everything out.
I do notice a difference even on my skin too when I
Hmm.
drink water,
Yeah, it
for
helps your
sure.
hair, skin, helps your throat if you clear it a lot. It helps if you're sick like you are now, it can help clear it out. And some people say it helps lose weight, but it's kind of like a thing that's only for maybe a day or two because you're flushing stuff out. It's not a
Hmm.
weight loss thing, it just aids
Well, I
in it.
haven't seen that, so I haven't had any success with that part.
Before we touch on diet, since that's the primary focus of becoming or coming to a dietitian today,
Hmm.
I did see on your intake sheet that you only consume a little bit of alcohol during the week, so that's very helpful.
And some weeks not at all. I mean,
Right, so that's very good. And you drink wine, which is the healthier of the alcohol, so that's
hmm.
very good. Um, Having a lower alcohol intake can help maintain or lower your blood pressure as well because
Oh,
that can increase it if you drink a lot. And I
okay.
saw that you don't smoke, so that's very good. That can increase your blood pressure overall, and it can also increase it the second you start smoking a cigarette. Not the first time, but smoking immediately increases your blood
Well,
pressure.
that's not a problem. So that's
Right.
good.
And then I didn't want to harp on your stress levels too much. We did talk about that a lot last session. It's a
Hmm.
very harsh subject because you have a lot going on.
I do.
But finding healthy coping mechanisms to monitor your stress can also help your blood pressure. Maybe stretching every day, or meditating, or just reading a book and putting your phone down for just half an hour can really help. Or when you take the dogs for a walk, don't take your phone. So you're
Hmm.
only worried about just the one thing.
Yeah, I just read an article about caregivers and how they never take care of themselves,
Hmm.
and that the caregiver needs to really pay more attention to themselves. So that kind of gave me a little wake up call. So I'm going to try to do that a little bit better. Can't say that I'm successful at it right now, but I'm going to try.
How do you feel about making those changes?
I know I need to because there's more problems coming up, especially with parents that are aging and
Right.
in two separate places currently and all of that. So I know I have to figure it out.
Right. I understand that. So, making sure they're healthy coping mechanisms to lower your stress will help overall. And if they become something that when you're not as stressed out anymore and they're still part of your life, that is even healthier and better.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, the next thing I wanted to quick touch on was your caffeine intake. I did see on here, let me just find it real quick, on the beverage form right here that you do have a decent intake of decaf coffee, but not much caffeinated coffee. It seems like you only have a little bit of caffeinated just to kickstart your day, but you mostly drink decaf. And it's
That's true. And I usually, if I try to do half calf, so I'll
right, that's
do
what you wrote on
even
here.
at Wawa, like I'll get half the cup of decaf,
That's
and then
great.
yeah,
Usually, if someone says they drink a lot of caffeinated coffee, I tell them, especially with the large coffees, to try to do maybe a third of it decaf or not, just to see. Because I bet they can't really tell a difference. The
you
taste
can't.
is the same, but I think it a bit more as a placebo effect. Like they're drinking a lot of caffeine, they're just
Well, if you
gonna,
keep adding them more and more of the decaf to it,
yeah, they'll be better. So I'm not gonna also harp on that too much because it seems like you're also following that very well.
trying to.
So you are, if let me get this right, you go to sleep the same time every night. You take your medication the same time every day.
I do.
You are trying to stay very hydrated. You have a very low alcohol and caffeine intake, and you want to exercise regularly. You just don't have the time because your schedule is very erratic, and you are looking to lower your stress levels, but it's just not the right time. Does that seem correct to you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Just want to make sure everything's right. So, the next thing I want to talk about why your primary reason for being here is your high blood pressure relating to your diet. So,
Hmm.
tell me what you know about your diet or a diet in general that relates to high blood pressure.
Well, you should avoid salt. I know
Correct.
for sure.
Hmm.
And I don't use table salt
Okay.
hardly ever. But that's pretty much. I mean, there's not much else I know about how diet relates to blood pressure other than watching your salt intake.
Okay. I'm glad that what you do know about it is absolutely perfect. Staying away from salt is very good because that can extremely raise your blood pressure. If you ever have had Chinese food and you feel very thirsty that night or very soon after, it's because of it being very high in salt. Yeah. So, also, when I just talked about your beverage intake, your diet was also written on here, and I did go over it because I asked you how much you eat certain things regularly. Just let me find it here. There we go. So it looks like you don't have many food cravings, you don't have
No.
many food dislikes, and that your eating style, you sometimes rely on convenience items. Some of your family has a different taste, and you're a little confused about current food and nutrition items relating to your health, correct?
Yes.
Great. So I'm glad you're here today for that. Let me just find my paper real quick. Perfect. So it also looks like you do most of the grocery shopping, correct?
I for the most part I do. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you're very comfortable at the grocery store and
Hmm.
where have you ever heard of the shopping the perimeter of the grocery store?
Yeah, I have. I
Right, so
have.
that's honestly one of the best things to do for a low sodium diet because that's where the fresh foods are, skipping the deli, of course.
Of course.
It's a produce, fresh meat, fresh seafood, low fat dairy, and
Hmm.
maybe even some frozen items are the best things for a high blood pressure individual wanting to help their diet. Because they're the fresh things, and the aisles are going to be things that are canned and preserved and all that, and they do all of those with lots and
Yeah.
lots of salt.
I don't like canned vegetables, so I do try to stick to the
Good, yeah, I did see that you
fresh
do
vegetables.
eat canned vegetables a few times a week, but not too much.
Well,
Maybe
we
someone,
make them. I don't necessarily
okay,
eat them. I
maybe you have a little
I think
bit.
I've gotten a real distaste for them actually. That the
Okay,
more
the texture is weird.
it is weird.
Yeah,
Mush.
fresh is
I'd
always
like to say
better.
they're mushy.
They are, especially if they're overcooked on the stove top.
Hmm.
They can be like that.
Yep.
I also see that you are not the person who prepares the majority of your meals. You said your daughter does that.
Yes.
When she cooks meals for you, do they tend to be low in sodium or just a normal meal?
Um, I want to say just a normal meal.
They, they aren't typically high in salt.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I don't think there's any salt other than what's in the product she uses, other than maybe a teaspoon here and there.
okay,
We're not
perfect.
we're not a fried food, salty kind of family.
Right,
That's
that's
not
perfect.
we're not partial to those kind of things.
And your food allergy sensitivities and tolerances are sensitive to gluten and some full fat dairy products. We talked about that last week,
Yeah,
right?
very much so.
Okay. And you try to follow a gluten free diet. So, all of that in mind is very good for your high blood pressure. So, ways to help lower your salt in the diet is eliminating table salt from the house if you wanted to do that. It can be hard when you live with other people eliminating
Hmm.
the table salt, but maybe you when it's on, if it's put on the dinner table or if it's next to the places that are cooking, put it in a place that you can't get to.
Hmm.
Maybe for us short people, we put it on a tall shelf or at the dinner table it's only next to the people who use it. I know some people with bigger families have one on each end.
Oh, we don't. Yeah, we don't do
Maybe
that.
keeping it on just one end of the table, especially on holidays if you're with a lot of people. And if a recipe calls for salt, maybe trying it without any salt in it.
Hmm.
Maybe not a baked good necessarily, because I know there's a little
Right.
bit in a baked good, and I know that makes it sometimes
Well,
taste
that's all
better.
scientific mix, you know.
Right. I would try eliminating salt from a dinner maybe a few times a week, and maybe telling your daughter not to tell you.
Hmm.
And then after the dinner is done, see if you noticed it at all, and maybe if it needed a little salt when you make the recipe, write it on there to say maybe half it instead of taking it out completely,
Well, I have been paying attention, and I noticed there's only one thing that I put table salt on:
which is
eggs,
okay. That's understandable,
and not a lot, just
right? So if you wanted to maybe make that a little bit saltier tasting, you could make a fresh pico de gallo and add a very small amount of table salt in there for
hmm.
flavor. They're typically in there. So instead of adding it to your eggs, which you typically don't measure out,
Right.
you can, even though I know you can tell if you can go overboard, sometimes it's hard. That if you make a fresh pico de gallo, you get more vegetables into it. And typically there is a tiny bit of salt in there, so you won't be adding it, it will already be in there. And it
Hmm.
will be very small amounts in each time
That sounds like
that
a
you
good
eat it.
in the summer when the tomatoes are really much better.
Yeah,
That
that
would be
could be
really good.
perfect.
Hmm.
Um, Also, ways with your diet to help with your high blood pressure are eating lean protein sources like chicken,
Hmm.
maybe lowering the amount of red meat in the diet just to help your body stay healthier, and maybe having some pork and seafood a few times a week, but not too much, but really focusing on lean protein sources.
Is shrimp considered? Oh,
Yeah, shrimp,
consider,
any type of fish can help. with your high blood pressure too because of
Okay.
all of the nutrients that are in them, like omega 3s. Adding fish to the diet or eating more fish than you do now, if it's not a lot,
Right.
is very good. You also don't want to have chicken every single night.
So there's no difference between, say, a cod fillet and shrimp or
Nutrient wise, yes, and the portion sizes are going to be different.
right.
It depends what fishes are fattier than others, what cuts are fattier than others.
Okay.
Um, if the skin's on it, what way it's prepared. Is it pan seared? Is it baked? Is it covered in barbecue sauce,
Right.
which also can raise your blood pressure because there's a lot of salt in
And
those
sugar too,
condiments.
isn't there sugar
Right,
and that kind
yeah.
of stuff? Yeah.
And all of that can raise your blood pressure, mostly the condiments.
Hmm.
So we can go over portion sizes on another one. I can bring in food models to see which
Oh, good. All right.
fishes and which lean protein sources, how much they would be for a serving size.
Okay.
We can maybe see how much naturally occurring salt is in anything.
Mm. All right.
Do you have any questions so far?
No, I don't.
All right, so the last thing I want to touch on for diet and high blood pressure is eating dairy products. Try to fix your dairy products to make them low fat dairy products.
Right.
Um, Full fat dairy products can also increase your risk for cardiovascular disease, but they can also raise your blood pressure because they are higher in fat, which can put some
Oh,
stress on the body.
right.
So just like sour cream, cottage cheese, shredded cheese, yogurt, all of them can come in lower fat options.
Right.
I would recommend buying them. I know some people can tell the consistency is different between regular ones and low fat ones. Maybe in a household like that, you would buy a regular fat one in a smaller size,
Right.
and buying the low fat one in a normal size or also in a smaller size because you don't want to have too much extra. But that can help you have a healthier diet in relation to your high blood pressure because it has less fat in it. So it'll be putting your body through less stress of digesting it and storing the fat molecules.
Yeah. I make a smoothie every morning with fresh fruit,
Hmm.
but I use a non-fat Greek vanilla flavored yogurt.
Perfect. And the only thing I would touch on with that is we can look at how much added sugar is in
Right.
there. A lot of ones you can get are naturally flavored with honey, and you can tell that if that's added or not added
Okay.
sugar. Like fruits have naturally occurring sugar in them, so that's a good sugar.
Hmm.
But added sugars are not good for you because they're
Right.
added. They're not natural. So we can go over that in
Okay.
another session as
Because
well
sometimes you
too.
think you're doing it, making a healthy
Right.
choice, and it ends up that you're
And
not.
the nutrition labels can be pretty confusing too.
Okay.
Um, and one other thing that I wanted to touch on was a healthy diet for high blood pressure is one that has a lot of fruits and vegetables in it.
Okay.
Um,
There's some room
Especially
for improvement in there.
okay, yeah, especially with raw ones because you're not adding any salt and pepper and
Oh,
spices and cooking oils to them.
right.
But some people do find it hard to eat raw vegetables because they feel as though they can't eat enough because they feel bigger because they're not cooked and shriveled down. But you can cook them without any salt. You can just,
Uh-huh.
they have little olive oil misters. So it goes on very light, like a mist,
Right.
instead of trying to drizzle it on really
We
light and
may
it
have
gets real
one of
heavy.
those, actually.
I'm sure you can find one on Amazon at a very cheap price too.
I think it's buried in the cabinet in our house
Okay, it'd be
somewhere.
good to look for that. It'd be cool to experiment with that.
I'll let you know next week.
Great. And you could add maybe some pepper to it and maybe some other spices like just paprika, not a paprika Asian blend
Okay.
or Mexican blend because that has a lot of salt in it, but individual spices instead of spice blends because the spice blends can have a lot of added salt in it
Okay.
because that's why they taste so good.
That makes sense.
So I just want to reframe what we talked about with diet. We're going to add more fruits and vegetables. We're going to focus on lean proteins, low fat dairy, and overall lower the salt. Do you have any questions about any of that?
I don't, not right now, but I think what I might do then before I see between now and when we make our next appointment, maybe I've never done this. I've always wanted to is write down what I eat.
Hmm.
Now I won't be able to do portions or anything like that,
Right.
but at least start with are the choices right,
Hmm.
and then the next part maybe could be is and start measuring.
I think next session would be great after we talk about how this diet and exercise and all of this goes, whether it's a week from now, a month, or 2 weeks from now.
Okay.
Then we can either go over this again and we can reevaluate, and or we can talk about what apps we can start to
I was
use.
going to ask you about that.
Mhm.
That was the
Some
question I
apps
had.
we can do tracking, some have meal plans on them, some are tracking and they show you portion sizes, and some
Okay.
are also diet and exercise.
It's overwhelming when you look at the choices or you
Right.
go in the app store and you're like, I don't even know what to
Right.
pick. So
So I will go over your chart again so I can write down what we went over today.
okay,
So when we go over next week, we can assess where to go from here. But you have my number. If you have any questions, you can email me, you can call me,
okay,
and we can go over and we can monitor your blood pressure next week. We can check it out because I'm sure between today and next week you won't have a doctor's appointment
I do not.
because an annual is only, very small time and a very long time in between each. So we can check your blood pressure next week and we will go over all of this and we'll talk about portion sizes.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I learned a lot.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.